It's one of those at the bottom. The dots, it said I could change things through the dots. Is that giving me an option? I can see something. It's okay.
Yep. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We have a really full agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. What I'd like to do is a couple of quick announcements. Please make sure you sign in for all senators as well as members of the gallery. So if you go to that link right there, please sign in. Please visit our website as well. So I get a lot of emails asking for announcements to be sent to the faculty. But I promised Dana that I would not send many emails. And so what we are doing instead are posting those announcements on our website. So please do check out the announcements on our website, because that is the way we're trying to communicate with the faculty without sending you yet another email. Also, Provost Nunn has asked to pay attention to, again, the opening, the searches that are going on. So you could scroll down just a little bit there. Keep going. There we go. So yeah, so basically, those are the different job positions and searches that are ongoing. So definitely, as you see those, have the opportunity, please attend. Obviously, your perspective and attention is widely coveted. The last thing is for virtual attendance. If you go to uncg.webex.com /join/FactSend, which I know you're not going to remember, I know we have it somewhere. But anyway, if you want to join by instant message, please do so. One of the reasons why we're bringing that up, and Brad, would you mind emailing that to all the senators, that email, that FactSend? The reason for that is because, as you notice, we do not have microphones at the tables, and it was advised that we not touch and share as much. So what we have instead are the microphones on stands, so you don't have to touch and share as much. And so Brad will be sending you a link to the WebEx room, just in case you want to just ask your questions via instant message. And again, the value of that is that you don't have to come up to the podium or to the microphone and again exchange contact. So, all right, with that being said, we're going to shift the agenda around because the provost has a very busy schedule. So what we're going to do is have Provost Nunn first speak, answer questions, and then we'll move to right after the emergency instructional continuity planning, because that's all connected together, and then we'll resume the regular agenda. So, all right, Dana?
Good afternoon. I hope everyone had an enjoyable spring break. I apologize for inserting myself on the agenda late and then asking that the agenda be reordered, but there's been a request for an emergency phone call with the UNC system this afternoon related to coronavirus issues, and that's why I will be running shortly from this meeting for more information. I'm sharing that with you deliberately because I anticipate on the heels of this call, some decisions will be forthcoming, and it's likely as early as tomorrow, you'll be receiving communications from the campus about the unfolding nature of this event. So I would like to alert you all to please be vigilant and look for those communications. I have just a couple of things to share with you today, and neither of which, unfortunately, is in the category of good news. I feel compelled, nonetheless, to get the news before you in a timely fashion. So I'm going to start with information about our budget. I want you to know that over spring break, the Faculty Senate Budget Committee and Anthony met at the request of Charlie Leffler, our CFO, and myself to discuss a forthcoming budget action. When I say discuss, our primary intent was to share the limited information I'm about to share with you and ask for guidance and input and perspectives, as this is a matter we must address in relatively short order. Specifically, this is all I have to share with you today. More will be forthcoming as discussions unfold in your units. What we now know, because numbers are official, is that we had a decline in student credit hours, the basis for our funding, and that decline in student credit hours, actual student credit hours, is going to result in a 1.52% reduction in our permanent state budget. So this means going into next year, our state budget will be reduced 1.52%. This is on the heels of many years of substantial growth. Okay, we must keep that in mind. We've invested far more than that over recent years in the university, so we can navigate this cut. I'm not going to try to downplay it and suggest it's not a cut. It is a cut, and we will all feel it, but it is nothing like the measures that were put in place here 7, 8, 9 years ago. This is very different. This is something we hope we can stabilize and even reverse going forward, but it is an action we have no choice but to address for the coming year. What I'm going to share with you today are just the broad figures about what this means for academic affairs. This information was shared just a bit earlier today with your deans for the first time, okay, the particulars, and they will be setting about having discussions in the coming weeks in units about priorities and how to move forward with cuts. I know some have been proactive and already begun some preliminary discussions, but there will be time, there will be several weeks for this exercise to unfold in a way that allows input from all levels. What I can tell you today is that because academic affairs broadly defined, inclusive of research, student affairs, enrollment management, and all the academic units, is just over 79% of the university's state budget, we are being asked to take a proportionate cut, which means our share of the cut will be $3,474,000 and some odd dollars. Okay, so about a $3.5 million cut across all of academic affairs. That's not insignificant, but that's not earth-shaking either. The way our funding flows to us for academic lines comes in FTE lines, so we will be required to cut not only dollars, but a certain number of faculty lines. Lest anyone be unduly alarmed, we believe this can be easily accomplished through open lines that are out there that might be pulled back. We do not see displacing personnel. Okay, this is not of that magnitude. all right? But clearly there are important decisions to be made. I pledge to you we will be completely transparent about these decisions as the information becomes available. We're getting together again a Budget Central website, so as there is information to publish, it will be available to you there. But this will unfold over weeks, again, starting with discussions in your units. While we were asked to bear in academic affairs a proportionate share of the cut, I will tell you that the distribution of the cut across units within academic affairs will not be entirely proportionate. We will make a priority stabilizing and driving enrollment, such that areas that are growing and have the capacity to grow in the near term may be cut less than areas that are not. I hope everyone here, irrespective of where you fall on that continuum, understands the need to do this. The variation may not be monumental, but this will not be proportional. It will be strategic, so we can stabilize this and move forward. We'll be transparent about those allocations. I anticipate we're at least a week away from being able to communicate to your deans what their share of the cut will be. Then they will begin to work with you to determine how to implement it. You can start even in advance of that, thinking about your priorities. I'm going to pause there. Again, I think it is important to get you news as it becomes available. I have sufficient respect for you to know that it takes a little bit of time for us to generate the numbers. This is all fast breaking, but this is where we are and more to come. All right, now I'm going to turn to another topic where also I will give brief information. And this topic is the university's response to the COVID-19 situation. You're going to hear, I think, a very strong presentation from members of a team that have been working hard behind the scenes in advance of spring break and through spring break to prepare some central materials and support and guidance in the event of educational disruption. I believe today, though I do not know with certainty, but I believe today it highly likely in the coming weeks, that is, couple of weeks, we will learn details about mandated educational disruption. Should that become the case, we want to be as ready as we possibly can. All the efforts that you are going to hear about today and all the supports are available to you, but I want to appeal to you as faculty, as autonomous professionals, to do the work you need to do to assess your courses and decide how you can best make the effort to complete where possible. And I know it won't be possible in all instances this semester. Look at your syllabus, look at the critical student learning outcomes, ask how you can redistribute assignments, how you can work remotely. We talk a lot about going online, but we won't be flipping a switch and taking most of our courses online. What we will be doing is using our learning management system, Canvas, which I hope you're all familiar with, as a way to mediate instruction. It'll be a little bit like we'll be using our learning management system to create an old school correspondence course rather than using snail mail. We'll be posting PowerPoints and sending out assignments and so forth to our students through the LMS and communicating with them that way. We're all at different levels. Some of you are very facile in online education, and perhaps you can, with minimal help, fully convert to an online course. If you can, that's wonderful. And if you have that expertise, I ask you be generous in sharing it with your colleagues. If you do not despair. Help is here. We will be working to support you in every way, but it starts with you. Start now doing the assessment to think about how you would restructure your course, and then know that help is there and we will assist in any way we can. For those of you who ultimately ascertain that you have clinical courses, performance-based courses, labs, or other things that on short notice cannot be accomplished remotely, what we will have to do is communicate with those students and assure them that as soon as we get through a period of disruption, we will be returning to them to do everything we can to mitigate that hardship. And that's where we will be asking everyone to step up with, who knows, we'll all be thinking out of the box, little short mini semesters, things that will help them graduate, continue their education, and not have financial hardship. You know, UNCG is a community, and this is going to call on all of us to remember those community ties and to step up. Any measure we take here, we are asked, we are required to take here, and I do anticipate something is forthcoming. I'm not withholding the details, I don't have them, but I will soon. Any measure we take here, we're doing for the benefit of the community. You know, we don't want to overreact, we don't want to panic. Most of us are not at risk, but there are people in our community who are at risk. And we must do our part. Now that North Carolina has declared a state of emergency, now that this is a global pandemic, you know, we need to be good university and world citizens and try to navigate through this. And higher education, if anybody can do it, we should be able to do it. I wish I had more details to share with you today. I don't, but I'm asking you to please start thinking, work with your colleagues, and look for news. We will be sending out tomorrow, or perhaps even today, the Educational Continuity Plan. It will be an evolving document. You'll hear more about that shortly from our colleagues. Let me also simply say there are likely to be announcements about gatherings of scale on campus. Look for those. Guidance is forthcoming, as well as guidance about travel. We may see some mandatory restrictions, so it's important that we all engage with that communication coming forward. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Do I have time for a question or two?
I know that you have to run off to the actual phone call and that no decision has been made yet, but do you think we should be getting a date today or tomorrow?
I anticipate that we will share information with you before the end of the day tomorrow about likely disruption and a start date and potentially very little time out.
Gotcha.
Many of the system campuses are on spring break. We are not. We may be given the option to take a few days off to prepare. All of this is in flux. I do not have details, but I expect before the end of the day tomorrow, we'll be able to share information with you.
If you don't have time for these now, I understand, but I have two questions about the budget. The memo that came out a few days ago from you and the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor said return to a growth mindset or a growth model. So I'd like to know why you expect that we would return to a growth model, given some of the things we've heard about demographics and so on. And then second, I'd like to know some explanation for why you think we got into the enrollment decline that we're in right now. I recall last time this happened, I remember someone saying, well, the model worked until it didn't work. So I'm wondering if that's applicable here.
The in-depth answers are indeed a bit more lengthy, but let me try to give a really short answer to each of these. I'm not confident we can return to a growth mode in the near term. I think it's possible if we all work together and work smartly. It's the very reason we've been launching new programs in strategic areas that are growing. It's the very reason we've been working diligently to reach out to new student populations through transfer co-admission programs, International students, obviously, we have some uphill work there now with what's going on in the world. Partway home returning students. We have been very committed for a few years because we knew this was coming. Population demographics are responsible largely for where we are. We've been in as much of a state of readiness as we can be, but we must work together as this campus did, 6, 7 years ago, to stabilize this and hopefully turn it around. I'm pretty confident we can stabilize it. I'm hopeful we can turn it around, but it's going to take all of us. How did we get here? Again, population demographics are a large part of what is impacting us. This is happening all over the country. It's happening, I can't say throughout the system. Few of our campuses are still growing. Those with $500 promised tuition are still growing. A few others are as well. But most of our peers, our comparable institutions, are also experiencing the same decline that we are. I'll ask you to keep in mind that we're moving this year to being funded not on actual enrollment, but on actual completion. As faculty, one of the most critical roles you can play as we go forward this semester, summer and fall, is help your students be successful in your classes, okay? If we can retain our students, they count for funding. If we lose them, they do not. So this is not just about recruiting new students, it's about retaining and successfully serving the students we have. Not a satisfactory answer. This is a really important issue, and I'd love to devote more time in the future if I can be given such on the agenda at a future time. And I'm waiting for the hook. I've got about 3 more minutes if you want me to keep going. All right.
I have some colleagues who are having serious discussions. Sorry. Shall I?
You can be next after Ian. Is that okay? So Ian, please.
Some colleagues having serious discussions about proactively moving their classes online before we get official requirement to do so. If that's done with the blessing of our department head, is that okay? Or do we have to keep meeting in person until we're given an official directive?
Talk with your department head. You'll have guidance before the end of the day tomorrow, but I think those who are ready to move sooner are going to be very well served. So I don't anticipate we'll be holding anyone back. Okay? And we had can we?
Yeah, my question, I guess, is more of a comment. I think one of the reasons that we have this pandemic is because we, let the horse get out of the barn. And if we wait a week or two to do anything, are we doing the same thing? And should we not do something now? I just want to put that out there.
Well, I think we are
feel like we're moving too
many
slowly.
things now. I did not share, but we will be canceling the destination event this weekend where we were planning to bring 1,500 prospective students to campus. It's highly likely you will learn before the end of the day tomorrow about a brief period of timeout before we go to some alternative kind of format. So I'm not talking about moving here at a snail's pace. I think we are taking these kinds of proactive steps precisely for the reason you describe. Thank you.
Hi, I've been
Last
asked by,
one.
I've been asked by my department to ask you to put a priority on keeping faculty offices open, since access to all the materials and is essential to.
Absolutely. We will do everything we can to do that. Please keep in mind that if we suspend instruction, that is not the same thing as campus closure. We anticipate in a moderate impact period, which is I think what we may be headed into, that we may suspend instruction for the reasons the last questioner raised, but we may keep the campus open with social distancing, proper disinfection, thinning of the population, so people may have access to retrieve materials. Some may be working in designated areas. It's not that we have to shutter the campus, at least that is not what we believe we are heading into, but we think we will be doing what we need to do for community health by suspending large events and instruction, should this come to pass. I've taken a little liberty here with you today, and I've told you what my crystal ball shows. It's a crystal ball. It's not perfect, but I tell you, it's a little more clear right now than it usually is. So take seriously what I'm saying and look for further communication before the end of the day tomorrow. Thank you very, very much.
Chad, you have like two more minutes. So it's this last.
We'll have communication for the students about residence halls as we move forward. I am not able to respond explicitly to this. I think this will be an evolving event. We know that it is very challenging to quarantine large numbers of students on campus. We have no need to do that at this time. We have no known cases on campus, but we will be following the guidance of public health officials, state health department, and the CDC. So I promise you the experts are on it, and we will share information as soon as we can. And there are already communications going out to students, but anything I would share beyond that would be really speculative, and I'm not comfortable doing that. Thank you.
Okay, so to keep the continuity of our topic matter, we'll go ahead and go with Dean Bull and Todd Sutton and David Teachout. There's a chat window here, so if any questions pop up, feel free to address them when we get to that point.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for letting us have this opportunity to speak with you. We're going to walk through where we are in response to instructional continuity and in supporting students in moving forward with completing the semester and beyond. So we've broken this up into 3 phases. The first phase is what we're calling the complete phase. Some of you might be familiar with what's here on the slide. First is a Keep Teaching website that has been launched with resources for you all to think about moving your instruction to a distance, right? So being able to provide that instruction through this disruption to your students to get them to completion. Additionally, as Provost Dunn articulated, there is an instructional continuity plan that has been crafted, and we anticipate that being available soon, and that will be on this website as well. This is going to serve as the central point of contact for all of you as you're thinking through possible solutions or challenges that you may be facing moving your materials to remote instruction. Additionally, we've participated in a Keep Teaching Needs Assessment, which this has been initiated by Todd Sutton and his team in ITS. So I'm going to let him give you a brief update around this. But what I do want to say to all of you is thank you. You mobilized quickly in responding to this, and we greatly appreciate it because it's made our job much easier. So thank you for that.
Karen. We were asked initially by the provost to get some sort of an idea of faculty readiness to be able to instruct from off campus. And so what that meant was, you know, bandwidth concerns at home. Do you have the equipment at home that you need in order to continue instruction, that kind of thing. And so we put together this assessment tool. We sent it to the deans, who then I would imagine most of you have seen it, have sent it to you and into your areas. We've gotten a response, a little over 800 responses to date, and that's at about 48 hours it's been out there. So that's an excellent response rate. And that does not include the Bryan School, who had already started this effort for themselves prior to this. So we're pulling together that data. We're going to be sharing it with the deans. And the idea was, we asked questions in there, you know, do you have the equipment you need? Do you have the bandwidth you need? Do you feel like your course presents a challenge to be able to move into an online modality? And we've asked people to sort of raise their hand. And so those that have and indicated that in the survey, the deans will be able to respond to that within their area to be able to address those concerns. The last, the next bullet we've got here is around network capacity, and I just want to address that briefly because one of the first questions that I began to get was, if we start to move instruction to primarily online, do we have the network capacity to be able to handle that? I want to assure you all that we do. I won't go into too many details because they're boring, but essentially we have 2 main connections to the internet here at UNCG. We currently only use one for our inbound and outbound traffic. The other one is set up for failover and redundancy. We, at our average inbound traffic, and that's the one that really matters, right? Because we don't send a lot out, but we get a lot in from the internet. Our average inbound traffic is typically hovering a little bit less than 50% of that one pipe. So we have the ability to say, if we start to see spikes and we're starting to concerned about our network bandwidth capacity, we can activate the other pipe, split off our traffic, and we are more than covered to be able to handle this. So I want to assure everyone that that we have the network capacity to be able to handle online instruction.
To the point of this fourth bullet, understand this is emergency remote teaching, emphasis on emergency. As Dana mentioned, this is not meant to be online teaching with all the bells and whistles to ensure pedagogical integrity to the fullest degree. And to that end, there will be adjustments that need to be made to ensure instructional continuity to the degree we can do that. And one of the strategies that I would ask you as representatives of the faculty that you're representing here is to spread the word that probably the best way to do this is to take a look at the SLOs that your courses are built on and try to think outside the box in a little bit more expanded way about what are some alternative ways that you could address those SLOs, and that way really keep the integrity of the course intact and maybe have a creative way to approach those. So the success of our ability, or the university's ability to make sure that we can move in a different capacity like this is really on the degree that the faculty can think in a little bit more expanded way about the instruction that they can give in this remote capacity.
So phase 2. So this is what's currently in development, although truth be told, you can see the faculty checklist is already made available, so that is no longer in development. However, at the time that we had pulled this together for all of you, this was under development. But found at the Keep Teaching website is a faculty checklist. So this is the bare minimum items and tools that are needed in order to keep your teaching moving forward with your students. So again, it's not all the bells and whistles and the academic pedagogy around online learning. It's what do you need to get that instruction out to your students for a successful completion. Additionally, on that website, you will find a face-to-face training schedule. Soon from the deans, you will receive correspondence encouraging you to receive training now if you feel you need that additional support, as well as assess your current courses and be thinking through what can you do to offer instruction in a different way if we should be asked. The sooner we plan, the better we will be if this comes to fruition. Additionally, what's also available, will be available is an online Canvas module. And this is a self-guided training that you can participate in if you don't have the ability or do not feel you need to go and sit with someone one-on-one and have, someone with you doing that instruction.
What that provides for you within Canvas is a module or a piece for you to be able to activate within your course shell that provides a framework for you to be able to, it's sort of like a checklist where you can say, do I have this piece of content for my course? Do I have this piece of content? And it allows you to sort of drag and drop your content there so that you can have sort of a self-readiness assessment for your course to be able to make sure that you've got all the must-have components that you need in order to teach online. So for phase 3 on the things that are to be developed, and I'll go ahead and take the first bullet because it's that exact same Canvas template that I was just talking about. Moving forward, and what we're doing is we're obviously responding to COVID-19. That's sort of the thing that brought us together, but we're trying to create resources that can live on into the future and be useful into other crises that we may face, be they weather or whatever. And so the idea is here, we're going to take that Canvas template that I was just telling you about, and we're going to just go ahead and automatically build it into all course shells going forward so that you don't have to go and search for it and activate it. It will be a resource there that you can turn on or off as you need to. The instructional continuity training that we are doing and all the face-to-face pieces that we're talking about right now, we're going to get them into new faculty orientation so that that information is presented right up front. New faculty are presented with that, and we don't have to play catch up as we're doing today. The continual development of this Keep Teaching website, we're designing this to be a resource that's going to live on and be a source of great information for faculty who need the resources around moving course information to online. And then building in annual assessments of both the needs assessment that we talked about earlier. We want areas of the university to be informed on the readiness of their areas, you know, with the technology, bandwidth at home, that kind of thing. So an annual look at the readiness of faculty in a given area by that dean, and then an annual assessment of the instructional continuity plan. Technology changes, the needs of our students and you all change. So we want to build in sort of an annual assessment of what we are developing now so that it can live going forward. Next steps.
Today, we expanded the three of us to a bigger, larger working group with there's school and college unit representation. We've included the Office of ORS, we've included, the gamut. It was quite a large group that came together to start thinking around more immediate concerns and how we might address those. So if a switch was flipped and we were asked to deliver instruction remotely, what would that look like for final assessments and final exams? And if we do that, how do we address accessibility or students who actually made the conscientious choice not to take a course at a distance, right? So we're looking at all of those things with a larger group to think through how do we handle this moving forward. Again, re-emphasizing that we're really encouraging all of you and your colleagues, please share the word, to really look at your courses now so that we are ready as opposed to waiting until the nth hour. We have all of these resources that we can support you with right now, but as you know, urgency gets greater, resources get smaller because there's more demand, if that makes sense. So the more we can do now, the better shape we'll be in. I'm going to turn this over to Dave around this period of readiness testing.
Yeah, and I think that's meant to be periodic readiness testing. So one of the ideas here is one of the ideas we found in the literature out there was there were campuses earlier on that were doing like 3-day testing, where they were testing their ability to go online for 3 days. And then they went back to face-to-face, but they took that information and it really helped them craft what was going on. We thought that's a great idea going forward, that periodically, and I don't know how this would be implemented, but it would be some kind of a schedule where we'd encourage faculty to take maybe a week or a portion of their class to do that readiness testing on a regular basis. This is kind of getting into a new way of thinking, something in the back of your mind that who knows what disruptions could happen, but the more that is part of our repertoire and how we're thinking about giving instruction, we can be more ready with all of the different resources we have and in the ways that we prepare ourselves for that. And that's just one way to do that. And then the last is, in addition to Keep Teaching, there are a couple other sites that are in development. It's Keep Working, and that's aimed at staff. Keep Learning, that's aimed at students. And another one that Terry Shelton had suggested this morning is Keep Researching, and that's for faculty researchers. And so that allows you to, all these different constituencies to operate remotely and keep the productivity going forward. I like that.
So listed here are just a couple of the resources that we've been referencing on a regular basis. So some of you may have concerns around our creditor, SAC-COC. They have been great to offer us affordances. Additionally, the Department of Education, the same thing, right? So we're looking at all of these things as we move forward. Additionally, we're in strong collaboration and connection with the UNC system. So with that, questions? So one of the questions on chat is whether or not partnership schools will be able to continue their internships as long as their districts remain open. So do you want to take that, Andrew, from that perspective? So Andrew was a part of that expanded group, and there was a long conversation around what were we going to do around clinicals, labs, those kinds of things, practicum, nurses, right? Those bits and pieces. And so at this point, we're going to have to faculty are going to have to be empowered to work through and think through those possible solutions in concert with your department chairs and your associate deans and deans. Do you want to say more on that?
Nope.
Okay. Thanks for the backup.
I will say this. Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
We are not talking yet about a closure of the institution. We're talking about a suspension of in-person delivery of some courses. So in principle, there isn't any reason why those who are doing internships off campus shouldn't be allowed to do that. But as you know, we're waiting for word from on high this afternoon, so that may all change.
Hi. I have a work study student that's a sophomore. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
And he's not one of my students in class, but he asked me today, he has a professor that doesn't have an office. And this isn't in the Bryan School, just let me say that. It's in a class course. He doesn't have an office, he's an adjunct. And he was asking me about how to get a hold of him. It is a cross-listed course, so I know the situation, but I'm concerned, or I'd like to know if we've considered students that might have challenges and how we're going to respond to those students having contact with professors and stuff, you know, so that we don't lose them, is my comment. So have you considered how we're going to work office hours? And I know I've taught online for like 5 years, so I know how to do online office hours. My concern is some of the students maybe, I wouldn't say with special needs, but maybe with learning styles that aren't going to fit that, how we're going to respond to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's a really great question. And so the Keep Teaching website has some resources available for this. So phone, email, WebEx or some other, or Google Hangouts, right? So there are tools out there that we can employ to try and accommodate those different learning styles and be responsive to students. And Andrew's going to add to that.
We're putting together a working group exactly on this question. So for instance, we know we have students that have accommodations for their in-person courses, and we know we have students who take face-to-face courses in order to, because they don't want or can't learn well in online courses. And the question is, what are we going to do for those students? So we have a group that's meeting probably tomorrow to begin to take on that set of questions. I'm glad you brought it up. It's important.
My question has to do with the students as well. I know that you surveyed the faculty and asked us if we had the resources necessary, the internet access and the equipment that we needed. But did you ask the students if they did? I know I have many students, not many, but enough students that it worries me that they're highly reliant upon using our super labs and may not, if once they're sent home, be able to access the internet at all, except by going to some place like their public library or something that may in fact be more dangerous than coming to school.
So we've been collecting a list of resources and best practices that we've been seeing those institutions that have already employed solutions for this. And we have been working closely with Andrew and his team around how are we going to execute, implement, communicate, and support them moving forward. Do you want to add additional?
This is on our minds because what we're really talking about here is emergency stopgap remote instruction. And no, we haven't surveyed the students because we're not even sure how to go about that. We know we've got students from rural backgrounds who may not have internet at home. My own alma mater decided to suspend instruction entirely for that reason, because so many of their students are low income and rural. We're not in that situation. We know some students are really going to struggle to access the content and the instruction. We're not really sure yet how to handle it. We think that we're going to have a period of time between when we get information this afternoon from the system office and when we're expected to throw the switch, as it were, to figure out what's going on. Look, this isn't going to be easy. We need all of you and the colleagues that you represent to bring your good ideas, to bring your welcoming attitudes and your experience, expertise, and hard work to this. The last thing, speaking for the provost office, in as much as I do that, the last thing that we should do is be trying to tell you how to change your courses or talk to your students or anything like that. What we need to know is, what do you need? And meanwhile, we're going to support our students and you as best we can. It's all we really can do at this point.
I'll add too that while we're in this moderate phase that the provost was talking about earlier, and she reinforced that the campus will not be closed, right? So you referenced the Super Lab and some of the other resources there. We're already in discussions to make sure that those resources remain open and available as long as we're able to keep them open and available. We're even talking about extending hours in some places for some resources. So we're highly aware, but I'm also aware too that if students get sent home, then they may not be able to come to campus to use those resources. So we're just going to have to employ a lot of different methods to address that.
In addition to identifying student needs, I'd like to point out that students themselves are a wonderful resource for feedback and advice based on their experience taking online courses. Today, I took about 10 minutes of my class and just asked students, for those of you who have taken synchronous online courses and asynchronous online courses, what was your experience like? What worked and what didn't? What would you like to see? Did you prefer WebEx to Google Hangouts? Did the conference feature work for you? And I got a lot of tremendous feedback, and I think that they felt more valued in this process of transitioning too. So.
It's not on. Okay, thank you. Just one further thing. First of all, thank you for doing all of the things that you're doing. I know it's completely triage over there, and thank you for being this ready. One thing that did come up today in a faculty meeting that we had in the English department was that, well, first of all, to be reasonable in what we're needing to do on the way forward, and that's what you were saying about examine the slows. But also, I think we need, to a certain extent, to try to abandon the concept of a synchronous online experience for the rest of the semester, because if the UNC system starts doing online, the Guilford County school system, I keep waiting for my kids to be told that they have to come home. And that will also be so not only for professors, but that will also be the case for a lot of our students whose children will be home. They might not be available from 2 to 3 on Tuesday and Thursday, so I think that might also be something maybe to share, that going online doesn't necessarily mean having to do it synchronously and simply because you might not be available and many of your students might not be available. I can see a lot of kids, or me finishing this at midnight, after the kids are asleep. So I that could be sent out in some way. I think that's really important because it'll take maybe some of the fear and burden off of instructors and students.
That's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And then we have a question in the chat around how what we're doing might be different from online learning. So again, to this end, it's about getting instruction to your students in a means that is feasible and in a way in which makes sense to you and to your students and to that course content. So this isn't about offering high quality online bells and whistles academic instruction. This is about, we're in a period of crisis if that's what's to happen, and how can we best get that instruction and content out the door for our students.
Yeah, we invite other students
Understood. Thank you.
The decisions about the adjustments that you make to your courses that serve your students are going to be up to you, because that's the only appropriate way for us to understand these relationships that we have with you and you have with your students and your students have with the curriculum content. We're going to do everything we can to support the work you're doing and offer some guidance about best practices. But I think we're going to have to hear from you how your students respond to your requests for their presence online, whether or not they've got the time to do the work because their kids are out of school. Or, I mean, this is uncharted territory in a lot of ways. You know, I ran an operation like this after a hurricane in Houston a couple of years ago, and I'm every day surprised at how different this situation is from that one. Thought that experience was going to help me, and it hasn't much. So whatever you're hearing from your students, we want to hear it too.
So I think it looks like all the questions have ceased, and then so the response to the last question that came in through on the chat, Andrew indicated we're working on it. So thank you for bringing that full circle with GAs as well. And actually, Dr. Haley Burke provided us with a poignant reminder, which is if you do have GAs, TAs, work study students, and the like, to remember that they are students first. So if you know, just to keep that in mind. So in closing, because we're uber caffeinated and running on a little bit lack of sleep, we did not introduce ourselves. So we might backtrack and do that just so you know who we all are if you don't. So I am Karen Bull, and I am the Dean of the Division of Online Learning.
And I'm Dave Teachout. I oversee the University Teaching and Learning Commons.
And I'm Todd Sutton. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Learning Technology and Client Services. I'm in Central IT.
And so if you have further questions, you can contact any of the three of us, and we will get answers for you directed to where it needs to land in any way.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the faculty, we want to thank you for, again, mobilizing as quickly as you've done. Okay, moving forward. Up the agenda. Yeah, so we're going to step back now into the beginning of our agenda. So we have a very special worldwide event that we want to talk about. And so Sean is going to talk about 50 for 50.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Sean McInnes. I'm the Sustainability Specialist for the university. It's a rough act to follow. And then you bring the climate guy up, and actually I don't have any bad news about the climate right now, at least as far as what I'm about to propose at UNCG. So, you know, this has been a real awakening for me. This is my first time at Faculty Senate, and I know you guys are all diligently working. I just want you guys to know that there are resources through my office as well to support your work, particularly the UNCG Green Fund. If you haven't heard of the Green Fund, it's a grant opportunity on campus. We get about $58,000 annually. That's the students created that 5 years ago, and it's their student activity fee money, but anybody can apply for a grant, so employees and students. And there's a brand new sustainability website, sustainability.uncg.edu, that you can go to and read all about projects on there. There's a new FAQ on there that'll help you walk you through the grant process. The next deadline is April 1st. You may not have time to do that, but you can start thinking long-term next academic year about applying to a grant to help your research or to help a project that you're doing on campus. Or a lot of times grad students will use the fund to pay themselves to do some research. We can't pay you, We can't pay faculty or staff a compensation for their time, but we can pay for supplies, programming, student labor, all kinds of stuff, food, travel, depending on the circumstances. So please go to the website and check that out. There's a new greenhouse gas report online as well, and that was good news. We've reduced our footprint by 8% over the last 10 years. And so there's a lot of new great information, and we'll be doing rolling out a green office certification program next year as well, and getting that's an old program that I'm trying to get back up online. But I am here today to talk about a program called 50 Actions for 50 Years. April 22nd is Earth Day. It will be the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And the great thing about this program is you can do it remotely. It's just a matter of you downloading an app. So we're actually partnering with EarthShare North Carolina. They're a nonprofit, they're a conglomerate of nonprofits based in Durham, and they work to promote sustainable practices in the business community within the triad. And they're branching, this is kind of the first time they're branching out, I said triad, triangle, and this is the first time they're branching out statewide. And so we're actually going to be competing with other companies across the state. I think there are about 20 companies that we'll be competing with. So I saw Wells Fargo, Bank of America, UNC Charlotte is another university from the system that'll be competing. And I'll send out instructions a little later, but it's an app that you may be familiar with. It's called Julebug. And let me see if I have how do I run through this here, Anthony? There we go. Get to a little screenshot of this here. Anyway, I'm sure Anthony can forward this to you because this is not scrolling for me. But it's an app on your phone, and you just self-report sustainable actions. So if you used a reusable water bottle, you say that you did that. If you bike to work one day, you did that. We're all going to be teleworking, it looks like, in the future, so you could say that you've done that. And you've saved, you've reduced your carbon footprint, and it'll tell you the carbon, the amount of carbon you've saved because of your, from going into the atmosphere because of your actions. And there are some prizes. So the winner of the team prize will get, oh, there it goes. I'm using mind power. Oh, you got it over there, thanks. And there's always a man behind the screen, right, doing things. So yeah, it's real simple. I'll forward everybody login information. I know it's kind of everybody's got a lot going on with what's happening with COVID-19, but I really do think that this, in spite of that, this won't take a lot of your time or effort, just to take you remembering, like, hey, I went for a walk today, or I turned the water off when I was brushing my teeth. The actions that they allow you to record are really that simple. And I think it's going to be a good PR opportunity and a good opportunity for us to kind of rally the community around some positive actions for the environment. Because I do know, I can say firsthand that is an important part of the mission for the university. And what else was I going to say? Oh, there are prizes for individuals. So they're giving out prizes for first through fifth place. And they could be anything from, I was told yesterday, from a subscription to a CSA, so a community supported agriculture, to, I'm trying to think, there was a Greenworks kind of gardening kit that you could win. There were a number of prizes. They haven't given me the exact list yet, but I do hope that you will find the time to support this, because it would be an online community event, and there'll be a lot of good PR statewide, and let's beat UNC Charlotte, right? So my office is in Moran Commons, and you can find my contact information on the web. If you have any ideas about sustainability, any concerns that you want us to address, please reach out to me, and I thank you for your time. Okay. Any questions about anything, not necessarily this program, but about sustainability on campus? We have yes. I will be sending that information out. Julebug is the corporation, and they have their own app, and they developed one that is specifically for these types of competitions. IKEA is a big partner of theirs. I learned that yesterday, and IKEA pits different stores against each other in the competition. So all that information will be forthcoming. The actual competition, it runs from April 1st to midnight on April 22nd, Earth Day. So all that information will be forthcoming. There's a code that I'll share that'll allow you to log in, and I'm going to provide little screen grabs and shots so that you get step-by-step instructions of how to join. Because it's not actually Julebug. I mean, that Julebug is one that you could get on and look at and figure out like what it's going to be like if you wanted to do that, but we're going to have a separate one that is just for this particular competition within the state of North Carolina. Anything else? Okay, thank you again. I appreciate it, and hopefully next time we meet, it'll be under better circumstances. So hang in there, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to catch up here. So I need a motion to approve the minutes. Second. Great. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate by saying aye. All right. Any opposed? All right, we're set. Okay, so the next got more important issues discussed. Wade Mackey, our lead delegate, is going to go over kind of the main topics for faculty assembly. Wade?
I'll try to be a little bit faster to get us caught up here. Took that yesterday, beautiful campus. Let's just take a moment to remember that amidst all this. Okay, faculty assembly, our meeting was the Friday before spring break, and we talked about a bunch of things, and I want to update you on a few of them. You have the complete packet of notes with a lot of the slides that we were shown. I'll show you some of that, but there's a lot more that you can dig into. Next slide. Good news is puppies. These were born at my house over spring break. Everybody should enjoy a puppy on a day like today and any other day. This is what keeps me sane when I go home after long days. These are Havanese, and they're lovely. They're live stream on my YouTube channel too. So next slide. At faculty assembly, we spent most of the big chunk of the day, everybody who talked to us had something to say about coronavirus. So I have nothing more to add than what's already been said. But this, to give you an idea, this planning has been going on for a couple of weeks. The Board of Governors, it was reported to us that they've been talking about Board of Trustee training. So this is something we've mentioned before, but if you've paid attention to the news, ECU had sort of an issue with some trustees. And so it's really on their agenda about how to train them to be better in the roles that they have. I want to make you aware of high impact campus visits. So this is our interim president is looking to do campus visits with a goal of raising awareness in the media about the impact the lack of a state budget is having on our campuses. So I have no further information on a schedule. I don't know if you've heard anything yet, but expect that may be something that comes up. So that's a great opportunity to help bring up a little bit more awareness of what's been going on because of the lack of budget. There's a leadership development program in the works. I have no other information on that now, but expect to hear something about that when it becomes available. Big action that we took was to endorse support for and change to the MER. Next slide. That is the minimum eligibility requirements. This is not telling campuses what your admissions requirements are. This is saying the minimum that anyone would have to be at any campus. The change, and this is taken directly from the packet, this is the direct language they use, the change is essentially from an and, you have to have this GPA and this test score, to an or, you have to have this GPA or this test score. They're also raising what that test score has to be on the or from the and. So more details of that in your packet. Next slide. We talked a lot about faculty salary. There's a tool called FactSat. It is for comparison with all kinds of peer institutions, but also will look specifically do a compression analysis. It's beta testing right now at the system and apparently on all of the campus IR units. And so that will be something that when it comes online, we'll be able to have more access to. It's currently got two data challenges. One is they know that discipline code reporting has not been uniform, and that's sort of essential to know the discipline of the faculty you're trying to compare. And the other is they use the term contingent but non-tenure track faculty data. They don't have comparison data to other institutions because they're often just reporting the 3 different tenure ranks. I want to tell you a little bit about faculty turnover. There was a lot about employee turnover in the packet you received. I just want to focus on the faculty side. The big point is that our faculty turnover at UNC system is lower on average than the peers that they're looking at. The full data on what I'm going to show you is going to come out in the fall to the campuses. What happens when it gets to campuses, I'm not exactly sure on. Next slide. This is voluntary turnover rates. I love that term. And what you'll see is that the benchmark is 4%, and UNCG is just above 2%. The gold is the 17-18 year, the blue is the 18-19 year. So compared to other schools in the system, our turnover rate amongst faculty is on, what's that? It is it's a big slide, but again, you have this in your packet, but it's fairly low relative to other institutions. So, right, you can see we're just above 2% as opposed to 4%. Next slide. If you look at just tenure and tenure track faculty, and I just put the key data point, we stood at 1.5% and then 1% last year in terms of turnover. Now again, 3% is the benchmark, and some schools are far exceeding that. Next slide. Non-tenure track faculty, we were about 3% in 17-18, and we're just over 4% in 18-19. Again, fairly low even among system schools. And again, the benchmark there was about 7%. More data in your packets. I don't have any explanation. Don't ask me to tell you exactly why those things are happening. Your guess is as good as mine. But I want to make you aware that full data will be coming to campuses in the fall. Next slide. This was a big one. We had a brainstorming session on summer and ad pay. So there's two things going on here. One is the interest in expanding summer, in getting more funding for summer and making summer like more of a regular semester, not a regular semester, but making more utilization of summer. But they realize there's an impact in terms of how faculty are compensated. And I'll use the term ad pay. I think that's what most of us here on this campus use for that. One of the first things that came up was that there's this 33% cap on summer ad pay. And the people at Systems said, well, we really can't find why that is, except it has something to do, and this is a direct quote, it appears to be based on federal regulations on allowable research effort for NSF and NIH. And so there was a lot of us that pushed back to say, you know, those are not, the cap is mostly impacting the people who are not in the group that you have a cap for. Maybe this should be reconsidered. And I personally can say I brought up the point about the disparate impact this has on low faculty salary. If your salary is $35,000 and a 33% cap, that hits you a lot more than if your salary is $100,000. So some people could, for example, if a summer class pays $4,000 a course and your salary is $35,000, well, you can't even teach 3 courses, where most everyone else would be able to teach at least 4 based on how the pay structure works. That's a little inside baseball. But we also talked about, they were asking us, like, could you have some of your in-load teaching occur in the summer? And it was brought out that that's often a problem because summer isn't exactly managed by departments. You just can't do that. But they thought, why wouldn't, if a faculty member and a department wanted that arrangement, shouldn't that be an option that we have? So these were just some of the things that were being discussed. No firm resolutions, but I wanted to put that in front of you and give you a chance to give feedback on that. So their goal is increasing summer, helping students get graduated sooner. And our goal, of course, is to make sure that we're adequately compensated in a fair manner. Next slide. Questions. That's down by the School of Music building. A beautiful walk down there. Highly recommend. What do you got? All burned out on questions? I'll take it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very smooth. All right, next on our agenda, we have Article 4 of the Constitution. We have Steve Yarborough, the chair of the Government Committee. And we've been having a lot of good conversations. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Hi, everybody. This is just a bit of information about where we are in this process and to remind you of why we're doing it. There's been over the years quite a bit of disparity and some conflict over the university's understanding of the role that faculty assemblies in the various units play, what the relationship is to the Senate and its committees and so forth. And we felt that it was necessary to, in the first place, seek out guidance from existing policy. I and my committee did a thorough search, I think, of both our university's policies and the system's policies, and can find absolutely no guidance or policy regarding that at all. We consulted with Alan Boyette. He too could find no such thing. So we began to put together, we thought in the first instance it would be important to have in our Constitution to spell out any regulations that might govern instruments of governance at the unit level. But we have come through discussions with the provost and others. It's probably a good idea to have first a university level policy regarding that. So we're working on two fronts. We're trying to put together a university level policy that would be sort of general in nature, and then have a constitutional amendment that would spell out the details of how that policy would be implemented in our Senate. So we're doing that. Also, on a third front, we are considering proposing a new Senate committee that would be composed of the chairs of the faculty assemblies of each unit. And these would meet regularly to deal with matters of concern to shared governance at the unit level. So we are working on a multi-pronged approach to this issue. We hope to have something in place before the semester ends. Very likely it all won't be in place before next year. And of course, by that time, we'll have a new provost and we may have to start renegotiating everything all over again. But that's where we are right now. So we wanted to go ahead and give you a look at the most recent, at least at the time I submitted to Anthony, it was the most recent version of Article 4, just to give you an idea of where our heads are with respect to this thing. It's very likely to change before the semester is over, particularly if the provost issues a university level policy regarding shared governance at the unit level. So that's all I have to say, really. I just wanted to let you know where we were, that we are still working on it. There's been a lot of concern come up from the faculty assemblies, and we're trying to address it as best we can. Any questions? Okay.
And I did want to reiterate this Article 4 really is a unit faculty governance. And so I know Article 4, we probably should get a better, more snazzy name, Steve. But the bottom line is it's about consistency in some standards of faculty governance within the units. And so the question really is, can we be a little more standard across the different units? And that includes faculty assembly faculty assembly chairs in terms of their even their years of service, et cetera, et cetera. So what we found is there's a lot of variation, and that's where this generated from. So I just want to provide you that history. Okay, next. So for those of you that completed our Ombud survey, so Lori is going to come up and give you some preliminary results. Again, the foundation here is we did have a successful resolution. The chancellor asked us to reach back out to the faculty to see if there's still interest. So, Lori?
Thank you, Anthony. So as you can see from the title I have, is it time to consider it once again? And in searching back in email, I actually found one from November of 2014. It was sent by SPOMA, and it talked about actually even a meeting with the Ombuds office over at Chapel Hill. So next slide. So just for those of you who are not aware, or faculty who may be asking, the word ombudsman is a term that comes from Sweden. But when we think of it at the university level, think of the words independent, impartial, informal, and confidential support. That's what really comes out of these kind of offices. Next. So as was said, this is an issue that has been addressed by the Senate before. In fact, here it was just about 4 years ago that the Senate did pass this resolution that was based upon a white paper that came from the Staff Senate and the Faculty Senate. So what I can tell you is that as the chair of the Faculty Welfare and Compensation, probably about once a year when we have our Senate committee breakfasts, I would always, where are we with this? And when Anthony said to us that, the time now was to collect data, that's why we just decided to have this survey. What I will tell you is I was invited to the last AUP meeting, and when I brought up the topic of doing the survey, there was a lot of interest in the topic and some suggestions that were offered to me. One of the suggestions was that I actually determined what how many campuses in the UNC system had an Ombuds office. And you can see up here there are 8 campuses. When I perused their websites, I did note that UNC Asheville actually is a faculty-led committee. Next slide. The next thing that was suggested was that I contacted 2 of the Ombuds office at our larger campuses at Chapel Hill and at NC State. So I did send an email, and the main focus of the email was if in having one of these offices, did it, for instance, increase the retention of faculty? So I can tell you the response that I got from Dawn Osborne Adams at Chapel Hill was that in her perspective, it was difficult to actually have data on necessarily retention. But what she did tell me was that of those who do go regularly to the Ombuds office, it is about 25% of those who attend are faculty members. I did send a similar email to Roy Baroff at NC State. And Roy is a person who does like to collect a lot of data on this particular topic. And one thing he told me was that actually his position is a contractual position. So he does not work there full time. Next slide. So what he did share with me was that he does collect a lot of data on this topic, and you could look at this information further, but the information really shows, who does go to the Ombuds office, everything from age, years of service, and other types of demographics. And then on the next slide, what he did share was there are 2 questions at the end, and this is what he asked of folks who do come to the service. And I think what it says is, if you did not come to the office, what would you do? And some of the responses, would they have left? Would they have sought the use of a lawyer and so forth? And then the last question pertains to after you've come to the office and sought counsel. And so, for instance, the very last one says left the university. So prior to coming, there was, I think it was 13 people indicated that without this assistance, they would go. After, I think the number is 4. So he definitely has a lot of data, and then there's comments on it. And if you want to look at more information, I have the link to that. Next slide. So this survey, I thank the members of my committee, and additionally, Michael Frierson and Steve Yarbrough also assisted in it. So I'm going to just share with you some brief data as of last week. And the way we designed this particular survey, we didn't ask what unit, rank, year of service, anything. And tried, as no survey we can totally guarantee anonymity, but certainly confidential as best. So questions that we asked, have you brought or could have brought to faculty grievance? And you can see the N in the response. We had 70 people indicated that they They could have, when it came down to actually brought a case to grievance, the number was only 6. Next slide. Then we asked if you had an unaddressed issue. That is, if there's something that you thought about bringing, and we see that the number actually does go up higher to 137 folks indicated that they did have a concern. In this particular question, I will tell you that I expanded it, and I had not only yourself, but a colleague that you know, and this I gave it a 5-year time range if they would go. And the next question got into if you had, as a faculty member, felt like you had limited guidance or awareness of your rights to present a formal grievance. And 141 had responded that they felt that they did not truly understand the process to present a formal grievance. Next. Then in asking if those who do seek some sort of assistance, did you go to Human Resources? So we see the number of respondents was 34. Then I asked, did they present their concern to either Alan Boyette or to Andrea Whitley? And we see the number was 40. Then we got into a question, have you had an issue concerning your faculty welfare that remains unresolved, or you felt that you had no support or guidance in how to proceed? And we see that the numbers are beginning to increase. Here we have 105. In the past 5 years, have you been aware of colleagues who are no longer at UNCG that may have benefited from guidance if we did have an ombuds office? And we see 143. I believe next, Anthony's going to talk to you about a paper that pertains to bullying, incivility, and harassment. So it seemed like a perfect time to add questions specifically in these areas. So when I asked the question, the concerns for either yourself or colleagues, did you feel the concern pertained to bullying or incivility? We see the response was 126 yes. When it came to harassment, a smaller number, but we see that people indicated 68. Then we asked, if UNCG had an ombuds office, would you seek guidance? And we see of the 240 people who responded, 215 said yes. And then do we believe we need that office? And the response was 218. Next. So we asked if people were able to put comments. So I just took short, responses. These were on the positive side, essential, critical, long overdue, much needed. But then I will tell you that we did have some in the negative, felt that it was a bad idea or they were skeptical of this type of office, cannot support another upper level administration, budget constraints. So this survey, next slide, is still open. I highly encourage you to talk to your faculty to complete it, and it will close on March 16th. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. And I want to really thank Lori for all of her work. What I love about her, she again goes out of off campus as well to talk to other people. Okay, no, actually, let's go to the civility statement, which would be in the agenda. So as Cam is pulling those up, so the faculty assembly is going to vote on something. So they definitely want a civility standard. They asked UNCG to develop one. I want to thank all of you that contributed to that document. So on April 2nd, the faculty assembly is going to vote on some type of civility statement. So that's really the first context. Now, what we heard prior to us developing this, and certainly there, I believe, is an email circulating now about concerns as far as a civility statement being used to actually, if you will, bully in terms of academic freedom. So that is a definite concern. It's an issue that we all take very seriously. But I think the sense was, and this is what directly from David Green, the chair of the faculty assembly, that there was a sense that the Board of Governors was going to vote or decide on something And so it's probably best that the faculty craft it, right? So I think that's kind of where we're at. So I think in many ways, it's not a matter of if, but really when. So I think I'm proud of us for taking the lead. I'm proud of you for the work you've done. But I just wanted to show you really now the two drafts that we have. One is the draft that we put together. And then the other draft is what the chair of the Faculty Welfare Subcommittee for the Faculty Assembly has crafted, which he felt that ours was too in-depth. And certainly the more in-depth, the more it could be used against someone inappropriately. And so this is the second version. So right now, the Faculty Assembly Subcommittee on Faculty Welfare are discussing these two drafts. And I just wanted you to know kind of what the situation is. Did we want to, or did anyone want to discuss, again, the issue of the impact on academic freedom? Because that is definitely, again, a legitimate concern. And I think definitely at the last meeting, we decided, or it seemed like it was decided, that despite that concern, it's better to still have a standard in place. So, but this is a good time to discuss it because it will be voted on April 2nd, the Faculty Assembly. So are there any comments, concerns about what we've crafted? Okay, well, good. I think, oh yes, Amy. Go. I'll bring you the, yeah, I apologize. Just need one of those throwable mics.
I was wondering if you had, I know that, I'm sorry, I was also trying to communicate with a colleague about what's going on, but were you able to consider one of the people who had written in about concerns about how this questions of civility might impact minority faculty members and things, because it might be kind of used against the very people who we're actually trying to protect for this? And have you changed the wording any, or I just want to be able to report that.
I think since the last time, no, the wording has not changed from the last draft we had. And I know that, in my opinion, my response to academic freedom is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but actually serious. So when the Faculty Assembly Subcommittee introduced this, they called it the no a-hole rule. Right, and the no a-hole rule basically is, the question is, can we express our academic freedom without being, right? Yeah, and I think that's the question that we have to ask ourselves, right? And so we're all very sensitive to the impact it could have on academic freedom, but I guess in my mind it would be, we all have to define for ourselves what the a-hole means, but I think I think the general standard is we should be able to work with our colleagues, express our academic freedom without crossing that line, right? And I think that's what we're trying to do. I think at this point, also, if it's a standard as opposed to a policy, it's something that can be pointed to. And I think the last point I'll make, and David, you're up, is that we wanted to focus on the affirmative, not the negative, right? So the idea that we wanted to present what good collegiality actually looks like before, and then we defined what bad behavior looks like as well. So, yeah. Yes, David, go ahead.
I only had a quick chance to read through this one, so this one strikes me as a little too vague. What I like about the one that we drafted, and I share the concerns around civility being used against people and academic freedom and so on, but I think the one that we drafted has the benefit of specifically naming bullying and defining it in very concrete terms. This one, to me, or any policy or statement that didn't do that is, I think, missing the mark, because the issue that comes up again and again is specific to bullying. And I think that needs to be named and highlighted as such. And maybe a policy or a statement on bullying would be a narrower way to get at this than something like collegiality or professionalism or civility, because that would highlight, I guess, supposing maybe in somewhat negative terms, but here's the behavior that's unacceptable, much like a sexual harassment policy does. It says, here's the definition, and here are the things that are unacceptable given this definition. I would push us to do that at whatever level around the bullying.
Yeah, thank you, David. Are there other comments, Diane?
Just to be clear, this would also be responsible for administrators adhering to this policy?
Yes, this is a UNC regard. Yes.
Thank you.
And it did originate from UNCG, so that's the other thing to keep in mind. Some administration is watching this very closely. Again, I want to applaud all of you for your efforts here. It's an example of how working together we truly can make an impact, because this will be voted on April 2nd. Yes.
And what I would say, in the vast amount of comments that we received on the survey, the words bullying and incivility were there quite often.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you again for everyone's efforts, and definitely I will be responding to those emails concerns about academic freedom. So we will continue discussing. All right. Next up is a favorite of ours. No, actually, would be general ed. Yes, we're all familiar with general education. But yeah, I've asked Aaron to join us. He's been doing fabulous work. The council's been doing fabulous work, and we just felt that it was important to update you on all the things that are happening. So, and Amy, feel free to chime in as you. Oh yeah.
Morning, afternoon, wherever we are. Hi everyone, how are we doing? So we're just going to move general education all virtual. Just make it easier. Everything's going to be virtual from now on. Yeah, just makes it easier. What we have done with general education is we have actually 12 committees going right now. We have one implementation committee, which is a standing committee, and we have 11 subcommittees, each responsible for one of the 11 competencies. The 11 subcommittees for the competencies all met in the past 2 or 3 weeks prior to spring break for 45-minute workshops, and they really did a great job of hammering out and finalizing the student learning objectives and a sort of a summary paragraph of the criteria of, if you were going to apply to put a course within this competency, what would that course look like? And that will help the General Education Council when they get proposals. It will help faculty and departments when they're trying to plan, hey, this course might fit in this competency. So between the SLOs and the summary paragraph, that was the work from these 45-minute workshops. They got through all of them prior to spring break, and then obviously spring break happened and Corona took over, so we kind of lost some momentum on that. But the council did review most of them, the exception being diversity and equity and data analysis and natural sciences, because that occurred after the General Education Council meeting on the Friday prior to spring break. So the council has not gotten a chance to see the report from those workshops. But of the workshops that we did see that the council did review, they were very good. Quantitative reasoning and health and wellness went through without any problems. I'm going to go back to my notes here. Amy, this is where you can hop in and make sure I don't miss anything. Oh, thanks. Appreciate the love. And of course, right when you look for it, you can't find it. Okay, written and oral communication in the framework for success, which was our Spartan Foundation course. All 3 of those went pretty well. There was some tweaking to be done. So those are kind of in limbo right now. The council liked the vast majority of what they had, but there was a couple wordsmithing and things that they wanted clarification on. So those should be good to go. The global engagement had some work that was done, but we think that global engagement is where it needs to be brought forth to council. So global engagement has not currently been brought to council yet, because there's a lot of work that needed to be done, and there's a lot of discussion with that. The critical thinking is in 3 different areas: social, behavioral, natural science, and the humanities and fine arts. And we wanted to make sure all 3 of those sort of disciplines all had an agreement of what they wanted the critical thinking to look like in those 3 disciplines. I don't believe that we've gotten those committees back together. Tia, we haven't had that meeting yet with them, have we? The idea was, when we met individually, if these 3 CTIs, critical thinking, they all kind of have a little variations. So we're going to actually bring all three of those subcommittees into one room and make sure they're all on the same page. So that was that. And like I said, I have not heard an update on diversity or data analysis because that occurred after council and then we went on spring break. So I don't have an update on that. Otherwise, I think we're actually making progress. I know the deadlines are coming fast and furious, but our next phase, our next step is to send out to all departments in the entire university, here are finalized SLOs, they've been voted on, the council has approved them. So now you can really start thinking about what courses you are looking for to move forward. Now the question is, how is that going to work? We're basically kind of putting them into 3 pods. One is that we are looking right now and we are going through them. The implementation committee is going through courses that we think automatically will roll into the new program. No ifs, no questions, it'll be fine. So I'm going to be selfish and I'll look at my own department, Kinesiology 220. That will roll over to health and wellness. I mean, the name of the course is Lifetime Wellness. It will go, no worries, don't have to do paperwork, etc. Does that make sense to everyone? The second pod that the implementation committee is looking at are courses that we think would fit into a competency, but they may need to tweak it a little bit. Sort of the old minor revisions form, if you remember that. So we will reach out to these departments and say, hey, your course looks like it would fit in competency number 7. However, you might need to tweak just these SLOs a little bit. Does that make sense? And then the third pod will be courses that may fit into a competency, but will need like major revision or a new course proposal from a department. We've always wanted to offer this course. We think it would fit here very well in a competency, and that would be a new course proposal / major revision. Those are the 3 main areas that we're sort of self-identifying right now. The fourth one are courses that are currently in general education that don't fit. And we'll say, you know what, you've kind of been living here, let's say a GN for a long time. We don't really see where this fits. However, if you do a major revision, maybe you can fit here. So that's kind of our 3, 4 pods or sort of, or buckets that we're putting courses in right now and self-identifying. Obviously, as the calls go out, if your department has an idea or a potential course that you think would really work here, reach out to me, reach out to the council, and we can look at it and et cetera. Now, remember, all proposals are going through council for vetting and approval. That's why those summary paragraphs from the subcommittee is so helpful for us. So we know exactly what we're looking for when we get courses coming in. So that's kind of how we're doing it. We're going to be working with the registrar's office to make this as seamless as possible. We're going to be developing crosswalks so we don't have to have faculty and departments doing dozens upon dozens of course proposals and course revisions. We're going to try to crosswalk it directly into catalog and directly into DegreeWorks as best we can. So we're going to see, and that's part of the role of the implementation committee, is actually working on, is this feasible from a logistics, a coding, et cetera standpoint. I think I covered everything that's been asked me. So if you do have a particular course, reach out to me. If you have other questions, let us know. But that's sort of our next plan, is hopefully starting to develop these courses, these crosswalks, and see if we can start filling out what we have.
I just had a question. So if there's a new course we want to consider for Gen Ed, or something that you guys will get an email saying this needs to be changed quite a bit in that last category, is that going to be put in Course Leaf to submit it? And will that be due with that deadline we have in the fall?
Great questions. As far as we know, it is going to go through Course Leaf, and the deadline, as we've been told, has been flexible. I don't think it's going to be that October deadline, but don't quote me on that. That's going to go in the minutes, isn't it? Oh, nuts. I think that deadline has flexibility because exactly your point. We don't want to have everyone slammed over to summer trying to get all these course proposals in October. I think there's going to be a little bit longer grace period because we're doing a whole revision. And honestly, personally, I'd rather do it right and extend the deadline as opposed to having parallel general education programs running for 4 years because we didn't do it correct the first time. So that's kind of where we are. But I haven't gotten a firm deadline from Andrew or from the provost on when that deadline is going to be. But I think we have a grace period. I think we need one, honestly.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Keith from the English department. And I'm the director of undergraduate studies, so I'm trying to think about the nuts and bolts here.
Sure.
The final SLOs and descriptions of the competencies, do we have a date when we can expect those?
On the actual SLOs. So
The final SLOs and.
for written communication, they're basically 90% there. It was a little bit of wordsmithing and moving, but the written communication SLOs are basically done. Yeah. They're like 90%.
We have courses that slot into other competencies.
Right. Like I said, of the ones that we're still sort of waiting on are the critical thinking ones. The diversity and equity and data analysis, those are really the ones that we're still kind of in limbo with. But we obviously want to get those out as soon as quickly as possible. So spring break was kind of a weird momentum killer, and hopefully we can get back into it heading into this week. But
I understand. It's just I have committees to call
Sure, I
and
understand.
certain things that we can't, until we have the target, we can't start the plan. So you can't give me a date that will have that information.
I'm going to say next week.
Okay.
We should have these done by next week.
All right. And I want to be sure I'm understanding the direction of how things are slotting. Departments should expect to hear from certain members of the General Education Committee about whether the courses in the department will automatically roll over. In other words, we're not going to sort of second guess that. We wait until you have determined that.
Yeah,
right?
so we're going to sort of send out the emails. We're probably going to go to the department chairs and let them disseminate, or director of undergrad studies, and probably both, and say, here's a list of English courses that we think will fit in these competencies, at which point you can take that data and go, okay, what about this, this, and this? And that's where we can have the conversation of, okay, you need to do some tweaking here, it needs a major revision, or it just doesn't fit. But we're going to give you sort of the first salvo of data to sort of see where you, in our minds, where you're sitting at. And we're not perfect, so we're just kind of basing this off of what we're reading, course descriptions, etc. We may request departments to supply us a syllabi or SLOs or something to make sure that marriage is better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder, are you going to post it to this February or this fall 2019 Provost's General Education website? It looks like
Yeah, we're going to
hasn't
be
really
posting
been
everything on the
updated.
Provost website because that's one everyone's been using. So we're going to get that updated with all the new information, etc. So we're going to try to put all the information
Diversity
up
and
there.
equity document looks the same. I mean,
What?
diversity and equity looks the same.
That has not, I don't
Slows.
think, Tia, has that been updated yet? Oh, good, she gets to come to the mic.
Nothing's been updated on the website yet, but once the final SLOs do come out, they'll be updated on that Provost site.
Yes. Thank you.
Just a suggestion, when you send it to department chairs, with the course leaf, we got left out the cross-disciplinary program directors. And so sometimes there's new department chairs that aren't aware of programs that intersect. So if you could also include us on that list of the emails that go out on this, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else on general education or the implementation that I may have missed, feel free to speak. I want to make sure we're being as transparent as possible. I appreciate all the hard work all the committees have done in this. It's a fun time. Anything else? Amy, anything? I figured not. Thank you.
Again, special thanks to actually the MAC, right? The MAC. So we decided that the implementation committee was just way too droll. So the Minerva Action Committee, is that right?
Academic curriculum.
Minerva's Academic Curriculum, the MAC. I like it. So the MAC. All right, great job. So the last item is brought to us by Provost Dunn herself. So the situation is students that are observing Ramadan, and part of that observance is fasting. So what was asked is that we look at the policy to determine, if you can pull that back up there. If we could look at the policy to ensure that students have the right to ask to take their final exams really at the beginning of the final exam schedule so that they are not too deep into fasting when taking their exam. So the Academic Policies Committee has been looking into this and discovered several things. One, on the registrar's site, they cite a Senate policy, academic policy that we can't find. Part of the emerging issue here is that we may need to revisit our academic policies and make sure they are a little clearer. But with that being said, a short-term solution we believe is to work with the registrar's office to just make sure that the highlighted area is just a little clearer so students have the right to ask that. So right now the gray area is that it's completely up to the instructor. And so we just want to refine that slightly so that students of any religion, but in particular this case, Ramadan, can ask for that exam earlier. So just wanted to give you a heads up there. So that's recommendation 1. And so the other recommendation you can see there, in all cases, a rescheduled exam must be taken by the end of the scheduled examination period for the university. So we're working on that. I just wanted to let you know that we're again trying to be much more inclusive and give students that right to do that. And I think we all support it. So it's just a matter of establishing or refining our policies. So, okay. So with that being said, we have one more agenda item, and I apologize profusely to our student senator. This was kind of a last-minute ad, and we had a very full agenda, but we've done really well, actually. So do I have the student senator here? Do I have Noah Ambrose? Okay, well, we do not have the student senator here, but the student senator was going to talk to us about UNCG as a voting site and all the challenges that is Noah maybe grabbing a cup of coffee? Yeah, apparently. All right. All right. So with that being said, I will edit the agenda item here to reflect anything he wants to say, maybe some slides. But otherwise, we are at the end of our agenda. Is any? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you, Facebook. So what I've heard is that the UNC system is going to make a decision tonight. I've also heard that they really would prefer that the institutions move as one. And the other is that there's an emergency meeting set tomorrow with the deans and the provost. So I think we're going to hear something probably by tomorrow. So, all right. With that being said, we got some snazzy name tags for you. So the idea would be for you to come to the Senate meeting, put them on, hobnob a little bit, and then bring them back. But I think given everybody's busy schedule, it seems like there's not a lot of hobnobbing going on. And so I think what I'm going to do, and this is kind of a trust thing, it's a team trust exercise, is I'm going to give you your snazzy Senate badge. And by the way, when you retire, you can take that badge, of course, with you. But please wear it with pride, and please make sure you wear it when you come to the Senate meeting or the faculty forum in a couple of weeks. All right. So at the end, go ahead and take that. For those of you I told you to bring it back, go ahead, just keep it. And but it is a way to thank you. It is a way to thank you for your service. All right. With that being said, a motion to adjourn. All right. Let's do that. Okay. Take care.
Fire!